Okay, guys, so today we are talking about half-elves and half-orcs. I'm going to put the disclaimer. We are going to avoid using certain phrases when it comes to this, specifically half-breed, end quote. This is another disclaimer that's in line with when we're talking about humans, with all that's going on in the world right now, especially south of the border and even up here, when we talk about Indigenous people's rights, we want to make sure we're using proper terminology, and we acknowledge the fact that we are three white cisgendered people on this podcast. So that being said, that disclaimer out there, please forgive us. We're doing our best here. That being said, because we're talking about half-elves and half-orcs, if this was the real world and half-orcs and half-elves did exist, which would you rather be and why?
Are we going to roll?
Yeah, let's roll for it.
I want this one.
You can have
This is my lucky dice.
5.
15.
19.
Damn it. Okay, go ahead.
Probably... I feel like a half-orc because they're big and strong and like to be out and raiding things, and...
You are fairly close to a half-orc as just your general personality. Like, you're an outdoorsman.
Half-elves are delicate creatures in my eyes, right? And that's just not...
Emotionally, not physically.
No.
Like, you can't really use the term delicate to describe you, Dave. No.
So delicate. I don't know what they're talking about.
I have feelings.
He's got so many feelings.
Megan?
But I was actually going to say that personality-wise, I was more of a half-orc than a half-elf. But more in the sense where I do take a lot of pride in, like, the shit that I've been through in life, and I strive to improve myself on a regular basis. And if I wanted to be one, I would probably be a half-orc more, because I feel like they live more on the side of ignorance is bliss versus elves, which live in more of a... I'm high and
try
ready,
to be of
two worlds.
Yeah.
I don't know what... Mom, I don't want to be like you or Dad. I don't know if I want to be like... I
want to be my own person.
I feel like half-orcs would just accept it and be like, bitch, I strong.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Funny enough, I consider myself very closely aligned with the half-orc and orc side of D&D and fantasy genre just itself. And always have. I mean, my Twitter handle is Oscar_the_.
Well, you got the tusks, right?
I actually
too many underscores.
I do have like slightly pointier canines.
I have forward fangs.
Yeah. So I've always identified a little bit too closely to the half-orc side of things. And as I've grown older and as I've seen the world, and especially in the state that it's in right now, being a half-elf and being that like perfect diplomat speaks to me, and being able to talk to people and being of two worlds but also of neither, and being able to bridge that gap and bring harmony, that sounds really appealing to me. Whereas just being the big dumb strong guy who is of questionable heritage, I've had that my entire life. I want to try something new, so I think I would prefer to be a half-elf.
I want that big, strong, dumb guy life.
Yeah, no, I'm with it. I think that half-orcs probably mesh better with humans and orcs than half-elves would.
Yeah.
So I think it would be harder to be a half-elf.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that in the episode ahead.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast with your DMs, Megan, Dan, and Dave.
Welcome to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, the roundtable Dungeons and Dragons discussion where you never know what you're going to get. I'm Dan, and with me are Dave and Megan.
Hello.
And today we're talking about...
That actually wasn't on purpose. It actually really hurt. Sorry.
Today we're talking about half-elves and half-orcs. So, guys, we know half-elves and half-orcs are often relegated to the edgelord category of things. They're the dark, mysterious souls who are of neither world. They have questionable heritage and are dark and gloomy and mysterious and have shadowed pasts. So, of course, we're going to be talking about them today. just right off the gate, what are you guys thinking about half-orcs, half-elves? Like, do you like them based on your research or your experience? What are you guys thinking?
I think we should be calling them Helves and Horks.
No, because if we say horks too much, Megan will have issues.
That's true. He's not lying.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because she'll hork up a loogie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So basically what we're going to do, Megan, what about you?
I think that they're just added to add flavor text to things. I don't think there's really any of the bigger concept to them other than to give people new ideas on how to play your character.
They kind of sit out of the realm of sense to me as well in D&D, because you could tell half-elves are just there because everyone loves Elrond Half-Elven from Lord of the Rings, and because there was a guy in Lord of the Rings named Half-Elven, we need to have a half-elf in D&D. And they love the idea of half-orcs because orcs were always the main bad guys, and you couldn't get away with playing a full orc. But orcs were always raiding and pillaging and doing other things while raiding and pillaging. So, of course, there should be some half-orcs that might be trying to.
No, I look at it from a different angle, whereas they needed to introduce a mechanic to blend these rage monsters that are sweeping over the land with the civilized world. How do you do that? Combine them.
Yeah.
Give them a bridge together, right? And that's kind of how I looked at it.
Yeah, it gives them a reason to communicate in some way, shape, or form, I guess.
Okay, so real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to start with half-elves, and we will cover half-orcs after as our topic 3, because we're going to be spending the majority of this episode on half-elves. The main reason because half-elves have 4 different sub upbringings. Again, we're trying really, really hard for the proper language here.
Thanks, Wizards.
Yeah, thanks, Wizards. That will affect them in very, very deep and meaningful ways, especially if you're playing them differently than others. So, real quick, we're just going to go over the description and the politics and everything about half-elves before we get into the mechanics. Half-elves are creatures of 2 worlds. They're both human and elf, but also neither. They are often seen as having all of the benefits of both of their parentages, but with none of the negatives. They have slightly longer lives, living up to 180 years.
Wouldn't that be like really depressing though? Half your family lives forever, half of them die in 100 years.
I think that's one of the reasons why half-elves are those perfect bridges between the 2 cultures, because they understand and we hit this last week when we covered humans.
The fragility of life.
The fragility of life and the intensity of life, and how spending, 50 years trying to understand a flower is just a waste of time, right? Whereas a human,
not to your high elf.
But not to your high elf. A high elf who lives for hundreds upon hundreds of years, if they die at all, can afford that amount of time. But a human, they got, as Adam said last week, you got 20 minutes max. If you can't catch me in 20 minutes, I'm on to the next thing. Because that's just what the human scope of life is. So elves, half-elves, really play the role as both. They are not often rejected by their respective communities, but are often they often choose which parent they want to live with and are raised by those communities very welcomingly. They if they are raised by human communities, they're often given elven names. If they're raised by elven communities, they're often given human names, but still raised like a member of the community. They are taller than your average elf, shorter than your average human, but that divide is within a matter of 6 inches, so it doesn't really matter depending on where your human is from. That, of course, can change as well. And
I am a tall human and a short human.
Right? And, I mean, they have the telltale, subtly pointed ears that point to their elven heritage, plus their slightly more slight frame. Okay?
Was that a pun, that their pointy ears point to their heritage?
Yes. That's I'm trying, guys. Adam's not here. Someone's got to be punny.
You're trying. I can tell.
Dave's just staring me down.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. In terms of their their role in the world. They often will play the role as the diplomat, building and bringing these two communities together, or if they are shunned by the communities, they get the sense of wanderlust, which half-elves are prone to get. They will go out and explore the world, and a lot of half-elves become adventurers and explorers because of the sense of wanderlust that they have. That being said, in past editions, Dave, half-elves have further exemplified that role of diplomat by getting bonuses to social skills and getting things like that. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
No. I never really dealt with half-elves because if I needed someone to do the job of a human, I used a human. If I needed someone to do the job of an elf, I used an elf.
Mm-hmm.
And that, case in point, I didn't see much purpose of them. Now, again, a lot of what I've done is Eberron-based, and everything that you just described is not the case in Eberron. They are very much a second-class citizen.
Oh, wow, okay.
We're
talking base Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, which is why I wasn't piping up in Craig. No. So, I mean, my experience is very different.
How are they in Eberron?
So Valinor is the area, the nation on Corvair where you're going to find them. They're the administrators. They get pushed into the grunt work. They're there to make the lives easier for the elves. Okay. So I'm hesitating to call them servants, but I mean
they're kind of like the bastard child from the medieval times of Earth that is serving the family, but everyone knows they're related to the Lord.
Yeah, I mean they're not even particularly mistreated. It's just they're not the same, and they are not as good. That doesn't mean they're still not good. They're just not. They're not elven.
Is that right? A construct though of other high fantasy novels and writers from the past? I find that's very much a Tolkien way of looking at it.
It very well could be this. I mean, it's a campaign setting that was written by a fan. Yeah. So who knows where the inspiration really came from? But I mean, it is a little bit different depending on where you go. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, even all the races are like that. I mean, how even Ravnica, they don't have dwarves in Ravnica. No dwarves in Ravnica. So I mean,
which is a crime.
It changes drastically no matter where
they have centaurs, but no dwarves. What the hell?
They should have half dwarf, half horses.
Done. With long arms.
So just really furry donkeys? Anyways, Megan.
Good pause. Good pause, everybody.
What are your thoughts on the half-elves and their role in society?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of it's a necessity to have, and the fact that I look at humans and I look at elves, they're very similar looking. There's no reason why a human would not find one or the other attractive. So making one makes sense. So now we've made one. What do we do with it?
Okay.
And this is kind of what they had in mind. I do like the sense where in 5th edition, at least, they are a little bit more versatile in the fact that they don't necessarily have to choose human or elf. They could grow up with both. There isn't really a big stigma in 5th edition specifically that pigeonholes them into, I have to hate this ancestry because they left me alone, or I have to go this one way or this one direction. So they were a little bit more inclusive in 5th edition, I felt.
Yep.
So I'm less uninclined to play them as a player or use them as a DM as filler. Would I use them as a main stakeholder? Probably not. I feel like they're just kind of you know how people just humans don't really like playing humans? I feel like humans don't really like playing half-elves because why not play again, to your point, if I'm going to want an elf, why don't I just play an elf? Yeah. Or if I want to play a human, I play a lot of humans in D&D, I'm just going to play a human because why the heck not?
I never play humans in D&D, and I never play elves either. If I want something with that elven bend, I play a half-elf because I don't like going full elf.
Yeah.
And most of that is just because I tend not to play overly dexterous character. And when I think of elves, I think of the nimble grace that they carry. I don't play with that. If I do end up wanting to play a character with high dexterity, I'm playing a gnome or a halfling, right? And I'm going prequels Yoda with it, and I'm jumping around doing backflips everywhere.
Yeah.
But I've never been interested in elves, and part of that I figured out very recently why. It's because I grew up on the Hobbit cartoon, the animated cartoon of the Hobbit, which was made in the, I want to say, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And the elves in that cartoon are hideous little things that are just ugly and vile. Like they look unhuman, right? And I mean, you look at the modern day Lord of the Rings movies, you look at what they do for their elves, and they're just very elegant, prettified humans.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
The animated show was very much not, and that's just the image that's burned in my head. When I think of elves, I think of short, and there's always like twigs stuck in the hair no matter what you can do, right?
Yeah.
And even the high elves always have some sort of elegant twig stuck in their hair.
Not just any twig, an elegant
but
twig.
It's an elegant twig. It's like birch or something.
For sure.
So this is like an issue I've always had. And when you look at previous editions when it comes to elves, even like 3.5, everything was amplified in terms of like angularity when it came to elves as well. So it wasn't just that their ears were pointy, it was that their cheekbones were pointy and their heads were like angled sharply, and they were long limbed and kind of frail looking. And I've never bent towards that. The concession has always been to me the half elf, which had that versatility that you find in humans, and a little bit of that grace and elven nature that I could put into the character. Speaking of that versatility that you found in humans, I'm going to go over the mechanics that we find in the player's handbook over on page 39. And then what we'll do is we will then roll the dice and decide whether or not half-elves interest us as a player and as a DM for NPCs. So, real quick, you as a half-elf get a charisma score increase of 2, and then you get 2 other ability scores increased by 1, your choice. That is a total of 4 ability score increases, which is the most out of any other class, any other race in the book.
Other than a human.
Other than a human, which gets +1 to everything, unless you go the alternative human.
Yeah, we're not going there.
So, as I mentioned earlier, they age at about the same rate as humans and reach adulthood around 20. However, they live much longer and often are 180, 190, 200 years old before they die of old age. They tend to be chaotic based off their elven heritage, but they value freedom and love and goodness and nature, so they do tend to be on the good side of alignment as well. Very rare will you find a lawful evil half-elf. Very rare. As for their size, they are medium, and they range from 5 to 6 feet tall, just like any normal human. Their baseline speed is 30, just like any normal human. They have dark vision because low light vision is not a thing anymore.
Which is too bad.
Which is too bad. I
either you can see or you can't. I don't know.
The thing that bothers me is dim light still exists.
It's true.
But low light vision doesn't. They are dealing with half the pie, in my opinion. They're all crust, no
choices
fill.
had to be made. Dragonborn's got cut from the list. We're all upset about it. It's fine.
They have Fey ancestry, which comes from their elven heritage as well, where they have advantage on saving throws against being charmed and can't be put to sleep magically. Just straight up can't. And they have probably my favorite ability, skill versatility, which they are proficient in 2 additional skills of your choice.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's useful.
That's incredibly useful. Getting skill proficiencies in this game is difficult if you are anything other than a bard or a rogue. So, languages are common and surprise, surprise, Elvish, but actually, surprise, surprise, 1 additional language of your choice as well. So, regardless of your upbringing, you get 3 languages as a half-elf right out the gate.
When it comes to languages, this is a bit of a sidebar. I've always wondered why in games, if you're starting a level 1 character, you get all these languages right away. Why wouldn't it be at certain levels that you get? I'm sure there's somewhere where at certain levels you get languages.
So you used to, in 3.5.
Okay. I was like, I know I've seen it before.
Every time you'd level, you'd get skill points that you would put into your skills.
Yeah.
Now it's based on proficiency in your modifier. But before, you would get a bonus that you get to add into your skills, okay?
Yeah.
Which made your skills ridiculous. Oh, my diplomacy? Oh, that's a 35, Dan. Like, and it happened all the time. But you could also spend the skill points to gain languages.
Got you.
So,
and you would put them in the skill linguistics to get the languages. There is also a rule based off of whatever your intelligence modifier was the amount of additional languages you could learn.
yeah, you get plus 3, you get 3 more.
I actually missed that. Learning languages in D&D 5e is hard.
Yes, it's difficult.
It's like next to impossible.
It
beyond...
was too easy in 3.5.
But it was
like,
too
oh,
easy.
I leveled up and I know we're heading to the Elven Nation. I can speak Elf now.
I'm gonna learn some Elvish language.
Yeah.
But then you look at like spells like Comprehend Languages, which is a first level spell.
Helps out.
It helps,
Yeah.
right? So as long as you have an arcane spellcaster at first level somewhere in your party, which if you don't, kudos to you because you're playing the game on hard mode.
Yeah.
It's difficult to learn languages now. So, guys, half elves from a straight mechanical base half elf frame of mind, do they appeal to you as a player, and do they appeal to you as a DM? Let's roll the dice. 14.
2.
I can't see.
17.
17. As a player, yes, I guess, sort of.
What about them
Not
is
really.
intriguing to you?
I like how many skill modifiers they get, or stat modifiers that they get.
Yeah.
I like that. That's nice. Plus the not being able to put to sleep and things like that. That's very convenient. It's got a little bit more flavor than a human. I mean, let's be honest, when you're making a character, you don't need a +1 to all 6 stats.
No.
Right? Charisma, if you're a caster, or, a paladin, I guess, is a caster too, and then another 1 in 2 others. You know what? That's reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, it checks some boxes, and getting 4 is better than the average. Yes. However, I feel like I could do better things with other classes. Other than caster, where does this fit? Like, what class would this fit into?
I see a half-elf paladin going for miles and miles.
Okay,
and
but I
miles.
feel like a Dragonborn paladin's probably more effective.
You're right.
So the only time...
Just, yes.
So the only
Charisma and strength. You're right.
Right, so the only time that I'm actually going to pick this to do that is if I'm making a flavor character,
Yeah.
or if I'm rolling on a random table, like there's the 9 base races.
Keep in mind though,
I'll
like,
roll.
and this is the thing that gets me about half elves is the half elf stat block could be the exact same as a Dragonborn +1 Constitution. So now, if you wanted to, so now your half elf is on a base level, just as strong, just as charismatic as your Dragonborn, but also could take an additional punch.
Yeah, but they don't have a breath weapon.
No, but they have skill proficiencies, and they can't be charmed, where your Dragonborn Paladin can be.
Yes, there's a fine line between them.
Yeah,
but
Dragonborns are also a bad example because they are the weakest mechanical race in the book.
yeah, and them not having dark vision, it's a sore spot for me.
Yeah, me too.
Like,
It's
why
a
not?
problem.
I hate it. Figure it out.
if you roll a Dragonborn on my table, you have dark vision. I've given it to you. You're taking the hit. Here's your reward.
Good to know.
As a DM, like, are you seeing a lot of these guys pop up in your campaigns? Are you leaning on them, or are you leaning on more of the humans or the elves, or?
Honestly, what I'll do as a DM is I'll just kind of pick what my players are. And if I have a player that's super interested in this conversation, maybe they'll be a similar race just to try to spark a commonality between them, get a little more conversation going. However, I don't think I've ever used a half-elf in that manner, and I probably will now, just to throw them for a loop. If I'm like, oh, and by the way, it's a half-elf, they're going to go, why the hell is this a half-elf? Why has it been 15 years and only now we're seeing a half-elf? And it doesn't mean a damn thing, because I love giving them the red herring. I love doing that. But yeah, I mean, yes, I see a place for them. I'm not sure it's in the style that I play normally.
That's fair enough. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
For me, like I said, as a player, I do enjoy half-elves. I've played a half-elf to level 20, half-elf sorcerer, but that was back in Pathfinder, and Adam is screaming at me just for mentioning it.
He loves Pathfinder.
He loves it. It's the greatest. But, I mean, like in Pathfinder, the D&D 5e half-elves fit the role of a sorcerer perfectly. So I would definitely be tempted to play one of those again. I don't know, man. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that half-elves carry more flavor than humans. My biggest problem with humans is they have no flavor. They are vanilla. They're not even vanilla with the raw bean still inside or French vanilla. They're just straight vanilla. They're the vanilla ice cream you get where you're not exactly sure there's milk in this. Like, that is what humans in D&D are to me. They're bland and flavorless. They are Cheerios. They're everywhere. You put them in your campaigns because it's good for you, but you don't really want to. Half-elves have that little bit of flavor. They are French vanilla ice cream made with real cream. And I
That just sounds really creepy.
fair enough. But like they've got that little bit of flavor. They got that little bit of character direction that I can build on to build an intriguing, interesting character. And I find that humans are wanting in that regard, and elves go too far in that regard. And half-elves blend that really well. As for in my campaigns, do I use them? I use them everywhere in my campaign, especially if I have players who want someone attractive to flirt with. Like, love interests in my games are often half-elves. Because...
You have a half-elf fetish.
No, not because I have a half-elf fetish.
Oh, it's not because of that, it's because of something else?
Yeah, it's because of something else, Dave.
Okay.
Thanks. It's because half-elves to me are... they're like humans, but just that little bit
More flavor?
more, well, a little bit better, right? They're just, they've got that social charismatic bump, and they do based off their mechanics. So they lean into that role really easy, right? One of the characters in our last campaign that Adam used as a love interest was a half-elf the entire time, Irvindale.
I know. I was going to mention him, but I didn't want to.
Yeah.
My heart is still broken.
Anyways, Megan.
I think that half-elves are a great intro class. In the sense that it is a great intro character for those first starting out in D&D.
Yeah.
You get a lot. It's pretty easy. It's not overly complex. So I find that a lot of people first introduction to 5th edition will kind of go to elves to begin with because it's what they know sometimes in high fantasy. Elves, humans, orcs, blah, those are the ones that you know already. So you kind of like, I have a base knowledge of this. I can be confident in playing this character. But then when you start reading regular elves, you're like, this is a whole lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can roleplay this, right? Like, I just, like, and it can be overwhelming. Whereas I find half-elves are a little bit more introductory to be like, okay, I kind of know what it's like to be a human. I kind of know what it's like to be an elf because I watched Lord of the Rings once. I can probably make this work.
Yeah. So
I feel like from an emotional standpoint, as well as a stat-based standpoint, it is a very good intro character for first-time players.
I couldn't agree with you more. They give just that little bit of flavor to be able to be a good springboard.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
As a DM, I would force them to choose a sub upbringing. I would force it.
One of the 4 that we find in Skag?
I would force it. Mostly because it stops you from overstatting your character for no reason. And kind of makes you figure out what you want to do with your character.
Okay.
Especially if you have a first-time player at the table playing a half-elf, it is kind of good to give them that direction, to choose something to focus on. Instead of giving them the whole world and saying, here's all these stats, you're great at everything, go.
Yeah.
If I was a DM and playing with a half-elf in my group, I would be like, well, then choose one of the 4. Or we'll talk about what the world is like and we'll make one up for you.
Cool.
Right?
Well, as for the 4, we will be covering them after a quick commercial.
Hello everyone, this is Megan. You'll recognize me from such things as Call of Cthulhu playthrough and various episodes where I'm mean to Terry, kind of terrified of Adam, and always wowed by Dan's lore knowledge. We're solidly into year 2 of the podcast now, and there's been a lot covered. So if you're new to It's a Mimic or just have the attention span of a guppy, let me remind you quickly about what is out there. So far, we have covered the horde mentality monsters, including orcs, goblinoids, kobolds, gnolls, undead, and even bullywugs. If we're talking about base classes, we've also covered a minimum of at least 3 subclasses, also including the artificer. Imagine digesting all of that info in one go. There have been a lot of episodes on the lower planes and fiends, and quite a bit on general D&D lore. And of course, what's D&D without our dragons? We've covered all chromatics and are working through the metallics right now. I know these are Terry's favorites and have also started becoming one of mine. In fact, you will hear my lovely voice so far on copper and brass, brass being my new love. So, it's been a while, and if you're looking for new inspiration, or if you've jumped in halfway through, go ahead and dig through our backlog and find some of those hidden gems. Those original Meet the DMs episodes are absolutely hilarious right now if you re-listen to them, because now we kind of know a little bit more about Dan, Adam, and Terry. But for now, let's get back to the show.
Welcome back to the podcast. So we are now going to move to our sub-upbringings for these half-elves that we are looking at to build our characters. So Sword Coast Adventures Guide gives us the most options here, just like it did with the humans, with 4 potential options for exactly what kind of elf your elf came from. You could be a half sun or moon elf, a half wood elf, a half aquatic or sea elf, or half drow. So I'm just going to quickly go over what kind of alterations each of these are going to do to your character. And then, guys, I want to roll the dice and talk about which one we like the best and why.
Did we mention that it's at the cost of 2 skill points?
Depending on what the ability is, has a different cost.
Has a cost, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to start off alphabetically with the Aquatic Elf or the Sea Elf. The half-elves in the world that are from the Sea Elf bloodline have the ability to, instead of getting their skill versatility, which is, of course, that thing that gives them proficiency in 2 skills of your choice, can instead choose to gain a swimming speed of up to 30 feet.
You can swim!
You could swim very, very well. Keep in mind, normal swim speed is what, quarter speed?
Yes.
It's half speed because of difficult terrain, half speed because of your swimming.
It's not easy to swim, apparently.
It's not easy to swim, especially if you're wearing armor as well.
I feel like it should be like you should have a basic, like maybe 20 to 25 swim speed in general, but you can't do anything when you're swimming, if that makes sense. And then if you're wearing armor, then you deplete the swim speed based on what you're wearing.
Like some sort of armor check penalty or something.
Yes, because is that does that exist?
Yeah, 3.5, that was a major mechanic.
This is why I could never play 3.5.
If you are,
I played it once in my life.
If you are rolling say you are playing a half-elf fighter character, or a paladin, half-elf paladin in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, or Pathfinder, your armor check penalty for your full plate is -8, Dave, for full plate armor.
Okay. So because they removed it, is that an unpopular
full plate is negative
process?
Full plate is -6.
-6.
But if you have
a tower shield is -4.
-10.
-10?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you could have a -14, or sorry, 16 on your roll.
What the
Arcane.
Who played this?
Oh,
I did
all the time
for years.
Yeah, and of course this is how it's done. You have 10 as your base plus your dexterity.
I feel like everything I've ever suggested has been in this book.
A lot of it.
3.5.
I've played it once, and I played a magic character. That's all I remember.
Look at how convoluted an AC total is. It's 10 plus armor plus shield plus dex plus size plus natural plus deflection plus miscellaneous.
That's a lot.
Oh, and then you can have, if you look below it, a touch and a flat-footed AC.
Oh yeah, touch and flat-footed.
Which, your touch AC is how difficult are you to touch, which is your AC minus your dexterity modifier. And your flat-footed is... No, sorry. It's your AC minus your armor is your touch AC. And your flat-footed AC is your AC minus your dex.
So I realized 5th edition is supposed to be a dumbed-down version of things to make it easy for people to get into it.
Now you get it.
Now I kind of understand, but because I did play 3.5 and I've played 4th.
Look at the skill list too.
Yeah, like.
But
it's crazy, and of course you get your ability modifier, so what you get from your regular stats, plus your ranks, which increases. You get like 10 at every level.
So we're getting railroaded here, but at the same time, like, was this an unpopular version of the game?
No, that is what everyone loved and played from the 90s onward.
Because I feel like at this point, everything I'm suggesting makes me want to play 3.5.
I just gave up 3.5 recently.
Oh.
There are people who hated 4th edition so much that they started Pathfinder. And Pathfinder is 3.75. It's like 3.5, but a couple quality of life things in there, like fixing the grapple rules.
5.
No, and I think we talked about our origin story of D&D, and mine was I played 3.5 first, and then took a hiatus, and then 4th came out, and then I played 4th, and 4th was when I played a while, and I hated it, and never played again. Mm-hmm. And then came back when 5th came out, because it was very easy for me just to pick up and just make a character.
5th edition has opened up the gates to make Dungeons & Dragons more accessible, and I think it is 100% for the better.
Yeah.
Playing, we've just started playing Pathfinder again in my Friday night group, and it is painful switching my brain from a 5th edition brain back to a Pathfinder brain, just in order to survive in the campaign.
It's difficult.
It's very, very difficult because now I'm starting to worry about like armor check penalties and things again. I'm like,
I would want to worry about that shit though. Like it.
You say that until
it
have
happens.
to.
I know,
yeah.
And then I fail, and then I'm gonna get mad. I'm gonna get sassy, and I'm gonna throw a plate.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
recently, within the past year, we were helping someone who was new to 3.5 get accustomed to the rules, which is ridiculous. And
I remember the struggle.
She was having a really hard time because she was like, "Well, it does this," and I go, "Well, no, it's actually like this," and I forget what the discrepancy was. And that's the day I found out that there was a 3.0 edition player's handbook mixed in with the 40 other books.
Doesn't help that the 3rd edition book looks remarkably similar to the 3.5, so you would get them mixed up often.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Anyways, moving
swim
on.
Speed, is it worth it?
So you get swim speed by losing 2 skill proficiencies. We've already mentioned that skill proficiencies are a major thing in this game and really difficult to come by.
Yeah.
It's a big sacrifice.
What level spell needs to be cast in order to be able to swim magically?
Freedom of movement, I guess, could do it. Enhance ability to give you bonus on athletics. Like there is, I think there is a swimming spell, but I can't place it off the top of my head.
But like
my guess, it would be at latest 2nd level, but it's probably a 1st level spell.
That doesn't seem like a ridiculous trade-off then.
No, it really losing the skill proficiencies does.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Is it doesn't really seem worth it if you.
I thought you were saying swim speed is worth it, and I was going to be like, please explain yourself.
Yeah.
No. Sorry, I misspoke. No, like if you can get it magically with a 1st or 2nd level spell, why would you sacrifice ability points?
That's
right?
fair.
Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
So, moving on, we're going to cover the Drow Half Elf. The Drow Half Elf can forego their skill versatility and instead gain Drow magic, which gives them the Dancing Lights cantrip. When they reach 3rd level, they gain the ability to cast Fairy Fire once and regain the ability to do so at a long rest. And at 5th level, they can cast Darkness once. And Charisma is their spellcasting ability for these spells. So you give up your 2 skill proficiencies for the ability to cast Dancing Lights, Fairy Fire, and Darkness once a day.
To get sparkle fingers and...
Okay, but think about the flavor, okay?
I think this one might be a little bit more worth it. Because you have Dark Vision, throw in Darkness, that's great. Fairy Fire as a utility spell.
Can Dark Vision see through magical darkness? Don't think so.
No, it can't.
No, it can't.
Yeah.
I'm going to check that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, the question is, can Dark Vision see through magical darkness?
Yeah, I don't...
No, it can't.
The Darkness spell?
Oh, Darkness spell.
The Darkness spell, which is magical darkness. Fuck it, fine. I'll look it up right now.
I'm doing it.
A creature with dark vision can't see through this darkness.
Boom.
Right there.
Cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no.
Okay.
But it fits thematically with the character.
Of course.
Right? But I would do it purely for Fairy Fire. A fighter with the ability to make invisible things visible.
It's true.
Right? Even if it's only once per long rest is immensely useful.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it last for? Like a minute?
It's a fairy fire, and it lasts for 1 minute concentration. And as a fighter, yeah, sure.
So basically, a battle it'll last. But I don't know. I feel like with the Drow specifically, just because I was in the episode where we covered the subclasses and whatever of elves, the Drow have such a rich history that as much as they're just emo elves, there's a lot to them. And is
there though?
I think that there is. I think that there's just a lot there to be said that if you wanted a character to be a little bit more rich and actually have a purpose and actually have goals and like things in mind of what you want to go towards, like a Drow is a good one to kind of go for.
My only problem with Drow at my table is I played during the 90s when the R.A. Salvatore Drizzt Do'Urden books were out. And every single person wanted to play the Drow that was going against their race and was actually good in heart and was a ranger with a pet panther that slung around 2 scimitars as 2-weapon fighting, which didn't even fucking work in the edition.
Yeah.
So like there were a couple things that bothered me, and then every single person at the table wanted to play that character because he's badass in the books. So why not, right?
Well, is it the Drow that have the light weakness?
Yes, yeah. Light sensitivity, yeah.
So the half-elf Drow is the way to get around that.
Yeah,
you won't
100%,
have that as a problem, but you'll still be able to play within the culture of the Drow.
Yep.
So I think it's a good for flavor text.
For flavor, I would also agree to a certain extent because you are still half Drow, you are still shunned a little bit in polite civilization, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that comes with it a whole slew of other political issues, but we're not going to cover those here.
Fun to play with.
Yeah.
But did you have an opinion, Dave?
No.
No. Okay. Moving on.
Okay.
So every time I think of Drow, I think of Chang from Community.
Oh. Touche. I haven't watched that show in a while.
I just did a rewatch of it not long ago.
Did you watch all the new Netflix? I know I
watched all 6.
This episode this whole time. Sorry, Travis.
The 5th season was the 6th brought it back up again though. It wasn't bad.
All right.
So you can next go half High Elf, which has 2/3 different varieties to it. You could either go straight half High Elf, which will let you forego your skill versatility and instead take keen senses, or a trait based off your elf parentage. This is basically lets you pick and choose one of your high elf traits, or just get that proficiency in perception that all elves get.
That's useful.
To give up 2 skill proficiencies for a skill proficiency isn't useful. I'm just going to double check.
Isn't it that they also get a cantrip?
Am
I crazy?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, that's a different one. Okay,
Yeah.
ahead of myself.
Yeah. So, you can forego skill versatility and instead take the elf trait, keen senses, or a trait based off your elf parentage. So, based off whether or not you are a straight high elf, you could get a elf weapon training or a cantrip, but that's or. Why are you giving up skill proficiency for, like, 2 skill proficiencies for 1 designated proficiency?
If you were not playing a magical character, picking up a cantrip of some kind from your parent heritage would be pretty useful. Like, imagine being like a dumb fighter and all of a sudden you have mage hand, so that you can deal with all the magical stuff, or
a fighter with prestidigitation,
yeah,
or minor image,
yeah,
has always been something that's been incredibly useful. And I mean, you could go with the high elf of the moon elf or sun elf variant to get access to those cantrips, and elf weapon training. But again, you're forgoing skill versatility for those.
I guess.
So, is losing 2 skill proficiencies worth a cantrip? I think in this sense, yes, because the amount of flavor your half-elf fighter is going to get is ridiculous if he could cast Prestidigitation or Ghost Sound. However, I do gotta say, if you are playing a half-elf sorcerer who gets cantrips, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Take your skill proficiencies, people.
Yeah, it's a flavor, yeah.
Sure, but if I'm a fighter that has that, and I have 1 cantrip, let me tell you, that cantrip was going to get lost to the bottom of my character sheet, and I'm never going to use it. Except for that one time, it's like, oh, what do I do? Oh, right, I've got that, which might be useful, but it's probably going to go unused for 2 out of 3 sessions.
I think that can be said for any of these, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, even if you think of the fact that, yes, a swim speed might be useful in a campaign where you're playing, like, a pirate campaign, sure, it could be useful if you're legitimately playing in a water campaign, but will it really come into handy? Or even when you're thinking about the Drow, like, will any of the spells that you picked up actually be useful? I mean, Fairy Fire, yes, but...
Fairy Fire is immensely useful.
Like how often will the other ones come in handy, though?
Well, I mean, having another point in strength or constitution, like a constitution especially, could literally be a matter of life and death.
Yep.
Right?
That's true.
So, do I really care about being able to cast Prestidigitation?
Oh,
like
I think you're...
As a fighter, you know, like...
You're not forgoing the 2 ability scores. You're forgoing your skill proficiencies.
Yes.
Oh,
so you're just adding to your proficiency.
My bad. Then, yeah. No. I agree.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Take them.
Finally, we're going to cover these half wood elves real quick. These are going to be your wild half elves. The more these are the ones who are going to suffer the most from that wanderlust. You can forego your skill versatility again in order to take the trait Keen Senses, or you can pick up Elven Weapon Training, Fleet of Foot, or Mask of the Wild, which are wood elf traits that do the following. You have Elf Weapon Training, which of course is that proficiency in long swords, short bows, and long bows. Fleet of Foot increases your base walking speed to 35 feet, which is immensely useful. And Mask of the Wild lets you attempt to hide even if you are only lightly obscured by foliage.
Florage.
Florage?
Heavy rain, falling snow, mist. That's an inside joke that no one gets. And I love it. Foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mist, or other natural phenomena. So, do you take Mask of the Wild, Fleet of Foot, in lieu of your 2 skill proficiencies?
It depends on what you're playing, again. I feel like if you're playing a rogue, and depending what kind of campaign you're playing in, this could be very useful.
Uh-huh.
Right?
I'd agree. Yeah.
So, like, again, it's the whole point of these is not necessarily to add, in my opinion, not necessarily to add something extra beefy, but to give your character a flavor or a purpose in being. And I feel like if you were to be playing a rogue, half-elf, this just makes sense to me.
So, I'm making a monk right now, Dan, for a campaign we're doing coming up.
Yep.
And I said to Wood Elf, this is something I might go home and have another look at before I actually roll it up.
Is this the same?
Yes, the same campaign.
Oh,
yes. Very exciting.
Yeah, I've started getting backstories and stuff in from everybody. I'm subtly hinting.
Except for us.
Oh,
no, you gave me.
I gave you twice.
Yes, you have. So 1 second.
So it's just me.
So it's just you. But I've planned out the campaign for the most part. It's just injecting backstory beats in now and building up shopping lists for you guys.
So you're saying this sounds interesting to you?
Yeah, I'm going to revisit this and have a look. I have not rolled up the character yet.
Cool.
But I'm
good to know for Dan.
Do so soon, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very.
I mean, I was going to look at my D&D stuff tonight, but.
Well, thank you very much for coming and recording with us anyways. So, okay, guys, we're going to grab our dice. And of the 4 options of half-elf sub-societies... Sub-upbringings. I'm never going to get it right. Which one is your favorite?
I don't even know if it is politically correct.
I don't know either. So, Megan wins with an 8.
Oh, wow.
So which one would I play?
Yeah.
Whew. Honestly, I feel like I would want to play half High Elf. Not for the benefits of any way, shape, or form, but more in the sense of I think the flavor context would be a lot of fun to play with.
Yep.
Just because if you are High Elf, you are definitely playing with the stigma of your ancestors probably hate you.
Yep.
And you would probably end up with a very sinister character as a result.
Depending on if you're running Sun or Moon. Do you know the difference between Sun and Moon?
Yeah, we covered it in the last episode I was in. So depending on what you wanted to play, you could go one direction or the other. You're not pigeonholed into one direction, whereas the band, where I feel like if you chose one of these other ones, you are kind of defining what your character is, where I feel like the High Elf has more options of how to play your character.
Cool. Dave, you're next.
Half Wood Elf. I just said it. I'm going to go home and look at this. It seems like it could be a nice way to bridge the gap between, like, to give it that little extra bit of flavor that I've honestly felt Half Elves have always been lacking.
Cool. Yeah. For me, I would almost agree with you, Megan, that I want to do half High Elf, but I want to do a half Moon Elf. And very specifically because Moon Elves are kind of flighty and
hippie.
They're hippies, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
They're kind of airheads, and they float through the moonlit jungles and forests, just like soaking in the moonbeams. I want to play the like half moon elf that like resists that urge all the time and is playing like a hardline paladin or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, we do things with order and decorum and manners, and I just want to sit in the moonlight, guys. Like, come.
Ooh, moon's out.
Yeah,
it just runs
right?
away.
Like, that sounds really, really cool to me, especially this guy meeting his human parents who are like, we cannot get him to like sit to follow the rules, to sit still for long enough. Like, we can't get him to do any of that. And then you go to the moon elf who are like, he follows too many rules.
Yeah.
Right? And doesn't go out in the moon and play and frolic enough. You need to frolic more. Right? So, like, I
thought I was frolicking. What am I doing wrong?
I am actively frolicking. Look at me frolicking right now. This is me frolicking.
I'm wearing a shirt that says frolic on it. I don't know what else you want from me.
So I kind of want to play a half elf, a half moon elf, a paladin, funny enough, and then just dump all the points in strength.
I think I said that in that episode too. Was that a paladin would make a really good moon elf?
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah. But...
Okay, so without further ado, we're going to move on to a shout out, and when we come back, we're going to briefly discuss my favorite race in the game, Half Orcs.
Hey guys, Megan here, wanting to kind of shout out myself. During the time of COVID-19 pandemic, instead of finding a new hobby, I actually decided to resurrect an old one and start drawing again, just for fun. I started my own new art Insta that you are more than welcome to follow. You'll find character art, just general doodles, and attempts to use new supplies and materials that I've never used before, so it's quite interesting. Feel free to give me a follow at Omega Art, so that's 0MEGGART. Should you already follow me at Omega, you can find the link within my bio. And thanks in advance for any support, follows, and likes in the future, and enjoy the show.
Okay, guys, we're back, and we're going to briefly discuss my favorite race in the game, the Half Orc. Now, with Half Orcs comes the acknowledgement of the fact that the union between a human and an orc is rarely consensual. And I don't know how to put that any other way.
I also feel that that is also a result of old high fantasy novels that do not have any stake in D&D anymore.
That's true. It is an
very
old
much
narrative.
Agree. I don't think that has to be the case.
No.
In fact, there is a series of books that came out probably not that recently. Now that I think about it, probably about 10 years ago, that was a continuation of the R.A. Salvatore books that we mentioned earlier.
Oh, that name's a trigger for me, Dan.
I know it is. He killed Chewbacca, so I get it.
Worst day ever.
Dropped a moon on him.
Okay, in ways to kill Chewbacca, he got it right.
Oh, yeah, sure, but like...
But you still killed Chewbacca.
But why?
Right?
You can't see my eye twitch.
Yeah. But anyways, he released the series of books where it showed the perspective of a civilized orc society.
Yeah.
And what's happened after the orcs have banded together all the tribes and have created a homeland and are now having to work with civilization and government and organization. And it's this really interesting view on orcs in past editions of this game have been feral, angry, overly aggressive. And even in D&D 5e, they have that aggressive rule.
Ability, yeah.
Yeah. But at your tables, that doesn't need to necessarily have your half-orc characters come from some sort of...
It doesn't have to come from a specific background at this point.
Right. You have option. There are civilized orcs in the world, and that's what we're going to say about that. In the interest of trigger warnings and stuff like that, we are going to move past a half-orc's heritage into what they can do. Half-orcs are often large. They are the quintessential strongman on the team. They usually are the ones that might be a bit on the dumber side, but have that strength of will and strength of character as well to propel their character arc forward. They tend to play barbarians and those as well because of old norms, but they still fit into that realm as being this hard to put down, hard to kill beast on the battlefield. So they tend to carry around their scars with pride, often displaying them. And if you want to get on a half-orc's good side, you ask them where the scars come from.
They love to talk about themselves.
They love to talk about their scars, their history, their ancestors, all of that. They usually come from either tribes or they live in the slums, which comes to the point where half-elves tend to be a little bit more accepted in the societies. Half-orcs aren't, especially in the human societies, because they are seen as monstrous. But in the in the orc societies, they're often seen as weak and little. So they get pushed out to the side on both of those communities. So half-orcs usually end up having to be fiercely independent, to stand up for themselves and defend themselves just in order to survive. And that's how you get your half-orcs the way that they are now. Half-orcs, in terms of mechanics, they get their +2 to strength, because of course they do. And because they're hardy, because they're hard to kill, they get that +1 to constitution as well. Note, they get 2 bonuses to physical stats and no bonuses to any of the social stats. That's rare in this book. Usually they're balanced. Mm-hmm. Half-orcs mature faster than humans and die sooner than humans. They're one of the shortest lived races in the game. They usually reach maturity around 14, 15 years old and die before they're 75 if they don't meet an axe first. I like playing half-orcs, by the way, with a very Norse feel. Honor is everything to a half-orc, and a half-orc must die on a field of battle with his blade in his hand. That is how I've always played half-orcs. There's that honor to them, and I love it.
Valkyries, take me now.
Yeah, right? In terms of alignments, they are, of course, chaotic, like their half-elf brethren, but they don't strongly incline toward good or evil. They might have a little bit more of their tint depending on their upbringing of the evil side if they are raised in that orc community that is more still nomadic and roaming the wastelands and raiding and pillaging. They might still have that evil bend to them, but again, based off what you want to do with your character, you are not kind of shoehorned in any role. As for size, they are big and bulky. They're almost always over 6 feet tall, and wide as well. They're big, but they're not quite big enough to be large, so they're medium sized. Their base walking speed is 30 feet because, like most medium things, it is. Screw you, dwarves. And they gain dark vision because of their orc blood has given them the ability to see in the dark. This makes night raiding very useful. Thank you, evolution. Half-orcs are menacing by nature, which gives them proficiency in intimidate. This makes sense because they're big. They've got the tusks. They're hardy. They're covered in scars and proudly displaying them. They're intimidating. They cut an intimidating figure.
Yeah, they've got a large, intimidating presence. Like, you know when there's one there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't ask, I'm sorry, are you half-orc?
No, you're
You're like, oh shit, there's a half-orc.
There's half-orc here, yeah.
You can normally smell it from a while.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's there, yeah.
Half-orcs, in order to really hit home the ability that they are hard to kill, have relentless endurance. When dropped below 0 hit points, nope, they get 1 hit point. and you're back up at 1. Now that can't happen again until you take another long rest, but that has been a lifesaver for many characters of mine, where I get dropped and then I still have that 1 hit point, so I ain't rolling death saves yet. Also, because of their savage nature, their tribal past, they do have their savage attacks. When they hit hard. If you crit with a half-orc, you roll an additional damage dice. Now, just to add some clarity to those of you listening outside, if you hit with a great axe, that means you're rolling, and you crit, that means you're rolling 3d12. If you hit with a great sword and you crit, you're rolling 5d6, not 6d6. You get to roll 1 of those dice. Okay? Moving on, languages, you speak Common and Orc. And
Good.
It should be noted that Orc is a harsh, grating language with hard consonants. So think Klingon. It's a close analog.
Yep.
But also noted, it's written in the Dwarvish script, which means orcs, famously antagonists to dwarves, got their language from dwarves. Thoughts? What do you guys think of half-orcs?
I like them.
How about this? Let's roll the dice. Let's discuss pluses, minuses. Do you guys like half-orcs? Do you not like half-orcs? What would you do different? And do they interest you as a player and as a DM? So, roll the dice. I got an 11.
I got a 1. You got a 6.
6.
Some
So
serious glare on that die. I can't see.
I am a fan of half-orcs. I always have been. I always will be. As I've matured, I've started liking gnomes and tieflings a little bit more. But half-orcs will always have a special place in my heart. Whenever I'm starting a new system for the first time, and it is a fantasy RPG of some sort, I'm rolling a half-orc barbarian, and I'm doing this. In the Pathfinder game that we mentioned earlier, I'm rolling a half-orc barbarian named Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar number what?
Oh, I don't know. I lost count at this
77.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I love half-orcs. I've always loved half-orcs. They're a special place in my heart. As a DM, I like putting half-orcs in noble situations because it's unexpected. I like putting them as merchant lords as well. There's one picture from a 3.5 book, I think it was Races of Stone, way back in the day, where it's a half-orc outside of an inn saying, with a big wood sign next to him that says, weapons will be confiscated is misspelled 8 different ways and crossed out. And at the very bottom it says taken away. And that is so like quintessential half-orc to me. I love it. So, Dave, you're next, man. Half-orcs.
So, I tend to I'm still a fairly new 5th edition player.
Yep.
Like, I've only been playing it for about a year now, and whenever I start a new set of rules, I tend to just stick to the very boring human fighter. I want to learn the rules before I have to learn how to make the rules work for me.
Yeah.
So I recently did a one shot with Adam and some others, and I just rolled randomly to figure out what I was going to be, and I ended up with a half-orc rogue.
Nice.
And it is one of my favorite characters I have ever played. It was the most effective character in the party. It did the most. It had the most skill. It was just a basic thief.
Let's be honest. You were in a party with a gnome barbarian who had negative to strength.
Yeah, he had a strength of 7. Now, that's not like a modifier of +7. That is a
negative modifier.
Yeah, he had a
Oh my
negative
God.
3.
And he just didn't rage.
Well, what's the point of that?
So, Justin, if you're listening, screw you, buddy. Rage.
That's like a bard not using bard inspiration.
Right?
Get it together.
He rolled for his as well. We straight up rolled the first D6s that we threw. That was strength. The next ones were dex. And we were having...
Okay. No, I get it then.
You did it the scary way.
Then there's a little bit more there. I got a little bit more
I didn't do it
respect
the D20 way that I keep threatening Brad to in our group chat.
Yeah.
But, it was close enough. Like, it was hard. But this half-orc was absolutely wonderful. He did the most damage. He was the last one standing at the end. I managed to kill, with help, obviously, 4 mimics, because, of course, they were mimics.
Yep.
2 ochre jellies, and I think it was 2 gelatinous cubes. and one of the ochre jellies was cut in half, and half of one of them finally killed me at the end after I dropped to 0 hit points and came right back up.
Yeah.
So like it was close. I was cornered up in the back of a stair. Like I was this close. Well, the ranger took the MacGuffin and ran away. Thanks.
Still bitter about that, hey?
A little bit, but
I can't tell.
the half orc was an absolute blast to play. I will be revisiting it.
Okay. What about as a DM? Do you put many half orcs in your games?
No, because if I have a NPC or a player in a game, it's to fulfill a purpose. And if I want to do that, I will either use a human or I will use an orc.
Fair enough.
And I'm very matter of fact. My sessions are more combat oriented. 5th edition has really kind of made me come out of my shell a little bit with the roleplay side of things. So maybe I will. But I mean, in the past, no, I haven't really used them. It's just been there's a guy there. Yeah. He's selling stuff and nobody asks about him, right? So,
Megan, what about you? Half orcs.
I never actually realized they existed until I was told to do this episode.
Are you serious?
I never looked at a half orc in my life as a playable character. And now that I look at them, I really, really want to do one.
They're great.
They look really fun.
Yeah.
I think the flavor text is phenomenal. And I feel like if you do move away from their historic confines, there's a lot there. Like, for flavor text and for like just backstory. And I'm always big on playing on the opposites. So like small character, really strong, large character, really weak. Like I love playing
like a half orc wizard.
Yeah. So I just want like a guy who's
trying to sneak through a kobold layer as the half orc was a lot of fun.
I was gonna say, or just really doesn't realize his size. You know, thinks that he's a small human because he's so articulate.
And then just keeps on hitting his head on the door frames.
Yeah. Like, it's like, oh, that's strange. And someone's just like, oh, who is this very large, scary man? And you're just like, I'm sorry, who? What?
Well, there's a very large, scary man here?
Where? What are you talking about? And like, I just feel there's like a lot of roleplay wiggle room with these that is not utilized and not used enough.
So you're going to love this. We've mentioned before, we have all played in Adam's campaigns at some point in time. Adam is a fantastic DM.
Forever DM.
And a forever DM. So we've all kind of played in some of his campaigns. Megan and I are part of like Adam's, like, my pride comes in, but it's his like main D&D group.
The legacy one.
The legacy group. So when Adam invited me to come in and play, he was like, play whatever you want, but I want to nerd out about the campaign a little bit. And he kind of gave me an insight about the fact that we were playing side B of a cassette tape of the campaign.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, so we're playing side B. Eventually I want to get back to side A. Here's what the story of side A is roughly going to be. And I'm like, cool. As I've mentioned before in this episode, when I start a new campaign, I want to roll a half orc. And I want to roll a half orc barbarian. When Adam told me what his plans for the campaign were, I said, okay, I cannot roll my half orc now.
Yeah.
I have to save my half orc for side A. So I made a Dragonborn Paladin Warlock. Because I was like, I just want to blow shit up. I know this is going to be a short-lived campaign because I know this campaign's ending. And then we're going to get to side A and it's going to be great. Was my assumption. We finished side B as it was. And then moved on to side C. Fuck you, Adam. And I'm like, well, my orc is reserved. So I'm going to play my gnome rogue. And then Lachlan Boyle was a thing. We're about to go back to finish up what is the last little bit of side B now that side C is done. But I have been sitting on my half-orc artificer. Now that the artificer class is out. I've been sitting on this since the artificer class came out. I've been sitting on a half-orc barbarian for 4 years waiting to play him. From level 1 to level 20, the quintessential iconic Oscar. And his name, I've told him, his name's going to be Oscar. He's going to be a half-orc. He's going to have anger issues. It's just going to be the thing. So, like, I've been waiting to play this character. But Adam's campaigns run long, and I was not expecting them to run this long. So, like, there's this character sitting here that I just desperately want to play.
I'm excited to meet him.
Yeah, it's going to be a good day. But, yeah, do you guys... do we have anything else we want to bring up about half elves or half orcs? I love both of the races quite a lot. I clearly like half orcs more than half elves, but I've played half elves as well. So, do you guys have any additional thoughts here?
You know, when you asked me to come and do this, I was like, half elves, like, ugh, really? All right, like, I guess, you know, so.
I have a feeling a lot of people are like that with half elves.
But honestly, now that we've actually sat and talked about it and so on, no, like, I'm legitimately going to go home and rethink my elven monk to look at one of these half elf.
Cool.
What did we decide it was?
Upbringings.
Sub upbringings, yeah.
Sub yeah, that one.
Sub upbringings.
Yeah.
We'll just call them sub-ups.
Sub-ups, yes. Yeah, but I also thought that I know I've seen them in the past, a half-orc monk can just whoop ass.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? Like, they're great too. So
Yeah.
When you hit, you hit. With monks, you hit.
yeah. Nuts. So yeah, no, I'm gonna go home and look at this a little bit more.
Cool.
I don't think I've given them the half elves specifically the respect that they probably warrant.
Yeah, I'm with you. Megan?
I really want to try playing half orc. Forever in my existence, I've always played small characters. I don't know if that's an emotional distress response. I don't know. But I am very interested in playing a half orc. Half elves are one of those ones, again, it's a round where if you just want a quick build, something with an easy background so that you can play off of, and it's a good first time play to go half elf, I think.
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
Once you get into the game, you'll want to get more into those interesting pieces or find a character that specifically fits one of those backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
It just works. A lot of versatility. So I like them.
Cool. Well, that'll be it for today's episode on Half Elves and Half Orcs. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as dozens of other podcast apps. You can also find us at itsamimic.com or email us at info@itsamimic.com. Thanks for listening to the It's a Mimic podcast, and make sure to check us out next week when we're covering
Paladins.
Paladins.
Oh, fantastic.
You've reached the end of another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. Connect with us at itsamimic.com. Don't forget to subscribe and hit those share buttons. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
All right, guys, so for this entire episode, we have been talking about half orcs and half elves, which feels a little lacking. It feels like we're missing a little bit something there. So,
Like halflings?
well, you would think, but halflings aren't because they're half of race.
They're half a size.
They're half a
They're
size.
half a leg.
So like
They're
they
a chicken nugget.
other than halflings, what other half race do you want to see in D&D, and kind of what would define, what definitive trait would they have? So let's grab the dice and roll and talk about this one.
All right.
Dave and I are going to have to roll off.
Oh, God.
And Megan's going first with a natural 20.
This is the question I'm not really prepared for either.
Okay, so Megan, different half human race, and what trait would define them? What do you think you got?
I don't even know at this point, because I feel like there's not a lot left on the table for the ones that would even allow it at this point.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, you have like half giants, you could have half dwarves. Half dragonborn sounds weird.
I feel like they wouldn't, though. But they would? I feel like I would want to see a half dragonborn. Actually, no, I will say that, because that would be interesting.
I feel like half dragonborns are already, like, dragonborn are the half dragons.
Yeah.
So, like,
what would that look like? Like, what features would a half human, half dragonborn have?
I would say you would be very similar to a draconic blooded sorcerer, but you got full paladin levels. So you got the scales, you might have a little bit of a claw.
I feel like when you get mad, you just explode into a weird elemental rage of some kind.
But Dragonborn aren't supposed to have tails. They have talons, but they don't have wings.
Wouldn't it be weird if so if you think about Dragonborn and how they're kind of like already a half dragon, half something else.
Yeah.
Imagine like the half human, half dragon, suddenly the tail comes back. Like that's the gene that survives because human blood for some reason just makes it occur.
One.
Okay, no, I like where you're headed with this. This is interesting.
But it's like a little tail.
Yeah.
It's like 4 inches long.
it's a nubbin.
Yeah.
It's just enough to make buying normal clothes very, very
and
difficult.
that's actually the only defining feature that they have for being a half human, half dragonborn is
Is
this little snub.
They have a 4-inch like vestigial tail.
Back nub. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. For me, I want to see official half dwarves.
Sorry.
Are you okay there, Dave?
Yes.
You're just thinking about nubbins now?
Well, yes.
I want to see an official half dwarf. I had in one game I ran a character who wanted to play a half dwarf, which is basically just a shorter, hairier human. So basically an Italian.
So hand gestures is
Lots
going to be
lots of hand gestures. So it's I want to see the official rules for half dwarves, because if you have half elves, I don't see like an ambitious dwarf going, wait, the elves could do this? Well, the dwarves could do it better. So I want to see like an entire tribe of like well-adjusted, accepted into their communities half dwarves.
So it's just taller people with red hair and big beards?
No,
So,
the
like-
shorter people.
No, not necessarily. If it's half human,
It could potentially
could
get
be taller.
the height.
Oh yeah, well yeah, but I meant like in comparison to the human side, they'd be almost definitely shorter.
We also have to remember that humans are innately actually pretty short, technically, in the D&D rules.
And dwarves are deceptively tall. Like dwarves
what I'm trying to
go
get
up
at
to
is
4.5, 5
Adam
feet.
a half dwarf?
Oh, I'm
Yes.
not certain he's not a full dwarf.
He moves real slow.
He's got the beard.
Yeah, he's got dark vision.
That wouldn't surprise me, weirdly enough, if that was to actually be a trait that he
No,
has.
those are just piercing blue eyes. Those aren't. Those
Oh,
aren't-
right,
His
right,
baby
right.
blues.
Yeah. All right, Dave. What about you?
So I know it already exists, but a centaur, okay? Now, what if a centaur and a human had a half centaur? Would it be 3/4 human? And which quarter would be horse?
No, it would just be a human with hooves for hands.
Yeah?
And feet.
So, like, think about like a satyr, but like full leg.
Okay, yeah.
The
But only for arms.
But only arms. And their arms are ridiculously long for some reason. I don't know why. But
Wait.
Hairy tails.
No. We have a living, breathing example of a quarter horse in our everyday world. Sarah Jessica Parker.
oh my god. It's like, I don't know where you're going with this at all.
I knew it was going to be good, though. Yeah.
No.
I mean, I've seen it on the internet before, but like...
No, I'm now imagining like a horse that's just standing upright, so the arms are really long.
BoJack Horseman.
Which...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's BoJack Horseman. A quarter of a horse is BoJack Horseman. Somehow the head becomes an actual horse, but he has like a bipedal body.
I've seen this question on the internet, so it's not an original thing by me or by any means, but like...
I want to know what train of, like, what your search history leading up to
No, you don't, Dan.
looking up
I don't.
what a quarter horse human would look
We
like.
can
No.
Stop that.
No. It's which set of nipples does the baby centaur suckle on?
Oh god.
Thank you for listening to an It's a Mimic production.
Okay, you're done. Get it.